The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber opened with a sound like thunder. Jake Martinez walked through them knowing his life and the life of every human being was about to change forever. The chamber stretched out before him like a cathedral made of crystal and light. 7 towering thrones held the 7 species that ruled the galaxy. Jake had been Earth's ambassador for 5 years. He had tried to make the other species understand humans. He had explained their wars, their culture, their dreams. But as he looked at the alien faces staring down at him, he knew his efforts had failed. The Zephyrian High Chancellor stood first. Her body was made of living crystal that caught the chamber's light and threw rainbows across the walls. When she spoke, her voice sounded like wind chimes in a storm. "Human Ambassador Martinez," she said. "We have reached our decision." Jake's heart pounded, but his face stayed calm. Behind him sat the observation deck where other human diplomats watched. Captain Lisa Harper was there, along with Dr. Richard Stone and Commander Paul Davis. They had all worked so hard to prove humanity deserved a place in the galactic community. The Chancellor's crystal body shifted and new colors flowed through her form. 50 years ago, your species was granted probationary membership in our council. We hoped that time and guidance would help humanity grow beyond its violent nature. Jake wanted to speak, but the rules were clear. Only when asked could he respond during a formal judgment. The Korthak representative spoke next. General Vex was 8 feet tall with gray skin like armor and forearms that ended in claws. His people were warriors, but they followed strict codes of honor. "Your species fights without honor," he growled. "You use weapons that kill from great distances. You attack civilians. You wage war on your own kind." The peaceful luminary delegate floated above her throne, her body glowing with soft blue light. She had no solid form, just energy held together by will. "We have studied your history," she whispered, her voice like a gentle breeze. "So much death. So much suffering. How can we trust a species that has killed billions of its own kind?" Jake felt anger building in his chest, but he kept it hidden. These aliens judged humanity for its wars, but they had never faced the challenges humans faced. Earth was one world with limited resources. Of course there had been conflict. The Nexari Trademaster was next. His people looked almost human except for their blue skin and large black eyes. "Business requires stability," he said in his cold voice. "Humans are too unpredictable. Your emotions change your decisions too quickly. This makes trade dangerous." 3 more species added their voices. The insect-like hive queen spoke in unison about how humanity's individualism was chaotic. The energy beings called the Archons complained that human thoughts were too loud and violent. The plant-like Verdani said humanity consumed resources too quickly. Finally, the Chancellor spoke again. "The vote is unanimous. Humanity has failed to prove it can join galactic civilization. Earth and all human colonies will be placed under isolation barriers. No human ship will be allowed to leave your solar systems. No galactic species will be permitted to contact you." The words hit Jake like a physical blow. Exile. They were cutting humanity off from the galaxy forever. "You may speak now, Ambassador," the Chancellor said. Jake stepped forward. His voice was steady and strong. "You call us violent, but which of your species has never known war? You call us unpredictable, but we have honored every treaty we signed. You fear our emotions, but those emotions drive us to protect what we love." The alien representatives looked unmoved by his words. "We gave you 50 years to prove yourselves," General Vex said. "In that time, 3 wars broke out among your colonies. Your military forces refused to integrate with galactic peacekeeping units. Your leaders challenged our authority at every turn." Jake felt the truth of those words, but also their unfairness. "We are a young species learning to work together. Given time, we could—" "Time is what you have had," the Chancellor interrupted. "The decision is final. The barriers will be activated immediately." On the observation deck, Captain Harper stood up. Her face was white with shock and anger. She had commanded one of humanity's finest ships, working alongside alien crews to protect trade routes and explore new worlds. All of that was ending. The massive screens around the chamber lit up, showing Earth's solar system. Jake watched in horror as streams of energy began forming a web around the sun and its planets. The barriers looked beautiful, like golden threads weaving together, but Jake knew they were a prison. Dr. Stone leaned forward in his seat. The scientist had spent decades studying alien technology, hoping to help humanity catch up to galactic standards. Now all that knowledge would be useless, trapped behind barriers they could never break. Commander Davis clenched his fists. His Marines had fought alongside alien soldiers, earning respect through blood and courage. That respect apparently meant nothing to the Council. The Chancellor's voice filled the chamber one last time. The barriers will prevent any faster-than-light travel to or from your space. All communication with galactic networks is now severed. Earth is alone. Jake felt the weight of failure crushing down on him. Billions of humans had looked to him and the other diplomats to secure humanity's place in the galaxy. Instead, they had failed completely. The human delegation will be returned to Earth immediately, the Chancellor announced. This council session is closed. As the alien representatives began to leave, Jake turned to face the observation deck. Captain Harper was already moving toward him, her face grim but determined. Dr. Stone was speaking rapidly into his communicator, probably trying to contact Earth while communication still worked. Commander Davis looked like he wanted to fight someone but had no target for his anger. They rowed back to their ship in silence. The transport was one of the last human vessels that would ever leave alien space. As they traveled toward the barriers, Jake could see them growing stronger, the golden energy becoming more solid with each passing moment. Captain Harper finally spoke as they approached the barrier. They think they're protecting themselves from us. Jake nodded. They see us as the threat. Maybe they're right to, Commander Davis said quietly. Jake looked at him sharply. What do you mean? I mean, maybe they just made the biggest mistake in galactic history, Davis replied. They're giving us time to grow stronger, time to prepare, time to become everything they feared we could be. The ship passed through the barrier just before it sealed completely. Jake felt the energy wash over them like a wave. Behind them, the golden wall solidified, cutting humanity off from the stars. As Earth grew larger in their view screen, Jake made a silent promise. The Council thought isolation would weaken humanity. They were about to learn how wrong they could be. 5 years had passed since the barriers trapped humanity inside their own solar system. The world had changed in ways no one could have predicted when the golden walls first appeared around their sun. President Angela Stone stood at the window of her office in New Geneva, looking out at a city that bore little resemblance to the divided world of just a few years ago. The old nations still existed on paper, but their borders had become meaningless. When faced with total isolation from the galaxy, humanity had done something it had never managed before in all its bloody history. They had united completely. The Global Emergency Council had become the United Earth government within 2 years, and Angela had been elected as the first president of all humanity. Her secretary knocked and entered. Dr. Cole is here to see you, Madam President. Dr. Ryan Cole walked in carrying a tablet that glowed with complex equations. His hair was gray now, aged by 5 years of intense work and little sleep. We did it, Angela. The quantum drive works? Angela felt her heart skip a beat. Are you certain? Ryan nodded and activated a hologram above his tablet. The image showed a sleek ship unlike anything humanity had built before. The prototype completed its test run this morning. We achieved faster than light travel without using any alien technology. Our drive is actually more efficient than anything in the galactic database. Angela sat down heavily. How is that possible? The aliens have had this technology for thousands of years. That's exactly why we succeeded, Ryan explained. They've been using the same basic principles for so long they stopped innovating. We had to start from scratch, so we found better ways to bend space and time. The president activated her communicator. Get me Dr. Singh immediately. Dr. Maya Singh arrived within minutes, her clothes wrinkled from spending another night in her laboratory. She was younger than Ryan, but her eyes held the same exhaustion that came from years of desperate research. Maya, Ryan says the drive works. Tell me about the barriers. Maya smiled for the first time in months. The barriers aren't just keeping us in. They're the key to everything. When I started studying the quantum signatures, I realized they're essentially a massive energy source wrapped around our entire solar system. She activated her own hologram, showing the golden barriers that still surrounded their space. The Council thought they were building a prison. Instead, they gave us unlimited power. We can tap directly into the barrier energy to fuel our ships, our weapons, our entire civilization. Angela stared at the display. They're powering our escape with their own prison walls. Exactly, Maya said. And there's more. I've learned how to manipulate the barriers. We can create weak spots, temporary openings. When we're ready to leave, we won't have to break the barriers. We can just walk through them. The president turned to look out her window again. In the distance, she could see the construction yards where humanity's new fleet was taking shape. Commander Alex Turner had been put in charge of the project, and what he was building bore no resemblance to the sleek ships humans had once admired in alien fleets. Human warships were ugly by galactic standards. They were angular blocks of armor plating covered in weapons. They looked like flying fortresses designed for one purpose: war. The aliens built beautiful ships because they valued art and elegance. Humans built ships that could survive anything and destroy everything in their path. "How many ships will we have ready?" Angela asked. "Turner estimates 500 combat vessels within the next 5 years," Ryan replied. "But they won't be like anything the galaxy has seen before. We've had to rethink everything about ship design." Maya nodded. "Without access to alien materials, we had to develop our own. The new hull composites are actually stronger than anything the Council species use. Our weapons are more powerful too." Angela felt a dark satisfaction growing in her chest. "What about personnel?" "That's where the real change happened," Ryan said quietly. "The military integration is complete. Every human alive has received basic combat training. Every scientist doubles as a weapons researcher. Every engineer can build warships as easily as civilian vessels." The president knew this was true. The isolation had forced humanity to become something new. In the old world, most humans lived peaceful lives while soldiers fought their wars. Now every human was a soldier, every civilian was a warrior. They had no choice. The galaxy had made them into weapons. Commander Turner arrived for the afternoon briefing, his uniform bearing the insignia of the new Terran Defense Force. The old separate militaries had merged into a single fighting force that answered directly to the global government. "Madam President, I have the deployment schedules you requested." Angela looked at the data on her screen. Numbers of ships, weapons yields, troop assignments. Everything humanity was building pointed toward one goal: revenge. "Alex, do you think we can win?" Turner's face was stone cold.
Win what?
"If you mean can we defeat the species that exiled us, the answer is yes. Our simulations show we can take on any 2 Council species at once and win decisively. If you mean all 7 species working together, it would be harder but still possible." "How can you be so confident?" "Because they made us into what they feared most," Turner replied. "They were scared of human violence, so they gave us 5 years to perfect it. They worried about our military capabilities, so they forced us to become a purely military civilization." Maya activated another display showing energy readings from across human space. "Look at what we've accomplished. Every planet in our solar system now has military installations. Mars has become a massive shipyard. The asteroid belt is one giant weapons factory. Even our civilian cities are designed to support the war effort." Angela studied the data. "What about the other human colonies? The ones outside our solar system?" "They're cut off from us, but not from the galaxy," Ryan explained. "Our intelligence suggests they're being watched closely, but not actively suppressed. The Council probably hopes they'll choose to distance themselves from Earth to avoid punishment." Turner laughed bitterly. "They don't understand humans at all. Those colonists are angrier than we are. They're trapped among aliens who exiled their homeworld. They're feeding us intelligence and preparing for our return." "How much longer before we're ready?" Angela asked. 5 more years of preparation," Maya said. "We need time to build the full fleet, train our forces, and map out galactic defenses using data from our colonial agents. The barriers will hold that long." "They'll hold as long as the Council wants them to," Maya replied. "But when we decide to leave, nothing will stop us." Angela stood and walked to a wall display showing Earth from space. The golden barriers were invisible from the surface, but she knew they were there, wrapping around her world like a cocoon. The aliens thought they were keeping humanity contained, but they were wrong. They weren't containing humanity, they were incubating it. 10 years, she said quietly. 10 years since first contact, 5 since exile. 5 more until we're ready, Turner nodded. The galaxy enjoyed 50 years of human cooperation. Now they get to experience what human opposition looks like. Angela thought about Jake Martinez and the other diplomats who had tried so hard to find peace with the alien species. They were good people who had wanted to build bridges between worlds. But the galaxy had rejected those bridges. Now humanity would build something else, an empire founded on alien mistakes and fueled by human determination. They wanted to get rid of their most dangerous neighbor, she said. Instead, they created their most dangerous enemy. The first alarm sounded at exactly 1437 Galactic Standard Time on a day that would be remembered as the beginning of the end for the old galaxy. Deep in the crystal chambers of the Council monitoring station on Kepler Prime, Zephyrian technician Vel 9 watched in confusion as her displays began showing impossible readings. The quantum barriers around the human solar system were fluctuating, not failing, but changing in ways that should have been impossible. The energy signatures were shifting, creating patterns that looked almost like doorways opening and closing in the golden walls that had contained humanity for 10 years. Vel 9 contacted her supervisor immediately. Primary monitor, we have anomalous readings from the human containment zone. Primary monitor Zex-1 materialized beside her console, his crystalline form flickering with concern. Show me the data. The holographic display lit up with streams of information, energy levels that spiked beyond normal parameters, quantum fluctuations that followed no known pattern. Most disturbing of all, sections of the barrier that seemed to be thinning and thickening in regular cycles. This should not be possible, Zex-1 said, his voice ringing like broken glass. The barriers are self-maintaining. Human technology cannot affect them. Sir, there are more anomalies, Vel 9 reported. I'm detecting massive energy buildups throughout their solar system. Power signatures unlike anything in our databases. Before Zex-1 could respond, the impossible happened. A section of the barrier simply opened, like a curtain being pulled aside. Through the gap came something that made every alien in the monitoring station freeze in terror. It was a human ship, but not like the crude vessels they remembered from before the exile. This ship was a monster of black metal and angular armor plating. Weapons bristled from every surface. Its very design spoke of violence and death. Behind it came another ship, then another, then dozens more. Admiral Kevin Brooks stood on the bridge of the Terran flagship Vengeance, watching as his fleet emerged from the gap Dr. Singh had opened in the barriers. 10 years of preparation had led to this moment. 10 years of building, planning, and growing stronger, while the galaxy forgot about the dangerous species they had locked away. Communications. Open a channel to the monitoring station, Brooks ordered. Captain Nicole Evans, his communications officer, nodded. Channel open, Admiral. Brooks looked directly into the camera that would broadcast his image to the terrified aliens watching their emergence. This is Admiral Kevin Brooks of the Terran Liberation Fleet. To any Galactic Council forces in this system, you have exactly 10 minutes to evacuate before we begin military operations. On Kepler Prime, Zex-1 stared at the human who had just threatened them. The being looked older than the diplomats they remembered, with gray hair and cold eyes that held no trace of the emotion aliens thought made humans weak. This was a predator, and they were suddenly aware they might be prey. Primary monitor, Vel 9 whispered. Our defense fleet is requesting instructions. Zex-1 activated the emergency channel to Council Prime. This is Kepler monitoring station. The human containment has failed. They have emerged with military vessels of unknown capability, requesting immediate assistance. The reply came from High Chancellor Ur-7 herself. That is impossible. Human technology cannot breach our barriers. The barriers are not breached, Chancellor. They opened them from the inside. The energy signatures suggest they have been using the barriers as a power source. There was a long pause before the Chancellor responded. How many ships? Vel 9 checked her sensors. Initial count shows 50 vessels, but more are emerging. Sir, these ships are massive, larger than our dreadnoughts and covered in weapons we cannot identify. Admiral Brooks watched the countdown timer on his display. The aliens had 3 minutes left to evacuate. He turned to his tactical officer, Commander Ben Foster. Ben, what do our scouts report about galactic defenses? They're using the same basic designs from 10 years ago, Foster replied. Minimal armor, energy shields, standard plasma weaponry. They seem to have made no significant military advances during our exile. Why would they? Brooks said grimly. They thought they had eliminated their only serious threat, Captain Evans reported in. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the monitoring station. They're demanding we return to our containment zone and surrender for violating galactic law. Brooks almost smiled. Reply with our standard response. Evans nodded and opened the channel. This is Captain Nicole Evans, Terran Liberation Fleet. Galactic law ceased to apply to humanity when you exiled us. You have 2 minutes to evacuate. On the monitoring station, the alien staff looked at each other in growing panic. The humans were not behaving like the emotional, unpredictable species they remembered. These beings spoke with cold precision and absolute confidence. "Primary monitor," a technician called out. "Our defense fleet is moving to intercept. 12 heavy cruisers and 30 escort vessels." Zex-1 felt something he had never experienced before: real fear. The humans had emerged from their prison stronger than ever, and they were not seeking peaceful contact. They were making demands backed by obvious military force. Admiral Brooks watched the alien fleet approaching on his tactical display. 42 ships against his 50. The numbers seemed almost even, but Brooks knew better. His ships carried weapons the galaxy had never seen, and armor that could withstand anything the aliens could throw at them. "All ships, prepare for combat," he ordered. "Remember your training. These aliens voted to exile us. They chose to treat us as enemies. Now they face the consequences of that choice." Captain Amy Davis commanded the destroyer Thunder, one of the smaller ships in Brooks' fleet. She had been a lieutenant when the barriers first appeared. 10 years of training and anger had forged her into something the galaxy was not prepared to face. "Captain," her tactical officer reported, "the alien fleet is demanding our surrender. They're threatening to open fire if we do not comply." Davis looked at her crew. Every face showed the same cold determination. They were humanity's answer to 10 years of exile and humiliation.
"Signal the fleet."
"Weapons free. Show them what they created when they locked us away." The first shots came from the alien fleet, bright beams of plasma energy that had been the standard of galactic warfare for centuries. They struck the human ships and accomplished nothing. The dark armor absorbed the energy without even glowing. Then the humans returned fire. The weapons that emerged from the Terran ships were unlike anything in galactic history. Not beams of energy, but solid projectiles that moved at tremendous speed. Kinetic weapons that punched through alien shields like they were not there, and tore through hull plating like paper. The battle lasted exactly 18 minutes. When it was over, the alien defense fleet was debris floating in space. Not one human ship had taken serious damage. Admiral Brooks stood watching the destruction on his view screen. Communications, broadcast on all galactic frequencies. Captain Evans prepared the transmission that would announce humanity's return to the galaxy. "Channel open, Admiral." Brooks looked into the camera, knowing his words would reach every species that had voted for humanity's exile. "This is Admiral Kevin Brooks speaking for the Terran Empire. 10 years ago, you exiled us because you feared what we might become. Today, you discover that your fears were justified. We are no longer seeking membership in your galactic community. We are here to replace it." The message spread across galactic space at the speed of light. On 1,000 worlds, alien leaders received the transmission and felt their civilizations tremble. The humans were free, and they were everything the Council had feared they could become. The exile was over. The real war was just beginning. The news of humanity's return spread through galactic space like wildfire. On Nexus Station, the largest trading hub in the galaxy, Captain Tom Riley watched alien merchants frantically loading their ships and fleeing toward the outer systems. The station that had once housed millions of beings from hundreds of species was emptying fast. Riley commanded the human cruiser Phoenix, part of Admiral Sarah Wells's strike force. His mission was simple: capture Nexus Station and use it as a forward base for deeper strikes into galactic territory. What he found when he arrived was a massive structure already half abandoned by its terrified inhabitants. Station Commander Nex Prime, a tall, blue-skinned Nexari, met Riley in the main docking bay. The alien's large black eyes showed fear but also desperate hope. "Commander Riley, we surrender the station to human authority. Please, we ask only for safe passage for our civilian population." Riley looked around the docking bay at the hundreds of alien families huddled with their belongings. Children of various species clung to their parents, all of them staring at the human soldiers with wide, frightened eyes. These beings had done nothing wrong except belong to species that had exiled humanity. "Commander, I need to contact my superiors," Riley said. He activated his communicator and reached Admiral Wells aboard her flagship Retribution. "Admiral, the station surrenders. They're requesting safe passage for civilians. What are my orders?" Wells's voice was cold through the communicator. "Our orders are clear, Captain. No mercy for Council species. They had their chance for peace 10 years ago." Riley felt something twist in his stomach. He looked again at the alien families. "Admiral, these are civilians, non-combatants. They belong to species that voted for our exile," Wells replied. "That makes them enemies. Carry out your orders, Captain." Riley closed the channel and turned to face Commander Nex Prime. The alien leader seemed to understand what was coming. His blue skin had gone pale and his hands were shaking. "I'm sorry," Riley said quietly, "but this is what your leaders chose when they locked us away." The Phoenix opened fire on the fleeing civilian ships. Each explosion lit up the darkness of space for a brief moment before fading to nothing. Riley watched from his bridge as escape pods launched desperately from the dying vessels. But his orders were specific: no survivors. Meanwhile, in the Korthak home system, General Kate Morrison faced a very different kind of battle. The Korthak Empire had sent their legendary war fleet to stop the human advance. 300 of their finest warships commanded by war leader Drakvor himself. The Korthaks were proud warriors who had conquered dozens of worlds through superior tactics and honor-bound combat. They expected to face the humans in glorious battle, ship against ship, warrior against warrior. Instead, they found themselves facing an enemy that treated war like a science rather than an art. Morrison's fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel, already in perfect formation. Her ships moved like parts of a single machine, each one knowing exactly where the others would be at every moment. The Korthaks had never seen such precise coordination. War leader, a Korthak tactical officer, reported, "The human ships are not responding to our challenge for honorable combat. They are simply advancing in formation." Drakvor growled his confusion. In every battle the Korthaks had ever fought, enemy commanders exchanged challenges and boasts before combat began. It was the proper way of war. "Signal them again. Demand they face us with honor." Morrison received the Korthak transmission and almost laughed. They wanted to trade insults and challenges like this was some kind of sport. These aliens still didn't understand what they had created when they exiled humanity. "All ships begin electronic warfare protocols," she ordered. "Jam their communications and targeting systems." Suddenly, the Korthak war fleet found their systems failing. Ships could no longer talk to each other. Weapons couldn't lock onto targets. Their proud formation began to break apart as individual vessels lost contact with their commanders. "What is this sorcery?" Drakvor demanded, but his officers had no answers. Human technology was doing things that shouldn't be possible. Morrison watched the alien fleet fall into chaos on her tactical display. "All ships begin firing sequence Alpha. Target their command vessels first." The human weapons reached across space with deadly precision. Kinetic projectiles that moved faster than anything the Korthaks could track. One by one, the alien command ships exploded as tungsten rods punched through their hulls at incredible speed. Drakvor watched his fleet die around him. These humans fought without honor, using weapons that struck from impossible distances and tactics that broke every rule of civilized warfare. His bridge crew looked to him for orders, but what orders could he give against an enemy that refused to fight properly? "War leader, we must retreat," his tactical officer pleaded. "Korthaks do not retreat," Drakvor snarled. But even as he spoke, another human salvo tore through his formation. Half his fleet was already dead or dying. Morrison opened a communication channel to the surviving Korthak ships. Her face appeared on their screens, showing no emotion at all. "This is General Morrison of the Terran Empire. Your fleet is defeated. Surrender now or be destroyed." Drakvor stared at the human female. She spoke of victory as if it were already decided, with no passion or excitement. Where was the joy of battle, the thrill of combat that made war worthwhile? "You fight without honor," he accused. "We fight to win," Morrison replied. "Honor is a luxury we abandoned when your people voted to exile us." The war leader looked around his bridge at the faces of his surviving crew. They were warriors who had never known defeat, but today they faced an enemy that was ending their proud tradition of conquest. "I will not surrender," Drakvor declared. Morrison nodded as if she had expected this answer. "Then you will die." The human fleet concentrated fire on Drakvor's flagship. The massive warship, pride of the Korthak Empire, lasted exactly 47 seconds under the assault. When the firing stopped, there was nothing left but debris. On the peaceful world of Lumina Prime, the energy beings who called themselves the Luminari gathered in their crystal of eternal harmony. These creatures of pure light had never known war, never understood violence. They had voted for humanity's exile because human emotions caused them pain. Now they sent desperate peace envoys to the advancing human fleet, commanded by Admiral Robert Clark. The luminary envoy, a being of soft blue light called Harmony Singer, appeared on Clark's view screen as a shimmering figure of beauty and grace. Admiral Clark, we seek peaceful resolution to this conflict. The Luminari have never harmed humanity. We simply wished for quiet and calm. Clark studied the energy being on his screen. He had read the files on the Luminari vote 10 years ago. They had supported humanity's exile because human thoughts were too loud, and human emotions were disruptive to galactic peace. Your species voted to lock us away from the galaxy, Clark said. You treated us like criminals for having feelings and emotions. Now you want peace because you're afraid. We made an error in judgment, Harmony Singer pleaded. We did not understand the consequences of our vote. Please, we offer full cooperation with human authority. Clark considered the offer for a moment. The Luminari had vast knowledge of galactic history and technology. They could be useful servants to the new human empire, but they had also voted to exile his entire species. Here are humanity's terms, Clark announced. Complete surrender of all Luminari worlds, transfer of all technological knowledge to human control. Your species will serve as advisors to human administrators, nothing more. Harmony Singer's light flickered with distress. You would make slaves of us. We would make subjects of you, Clark corrected. Just as your vote made exiles of us. The only difference is that we're offering you a chance to live. Across the galaxy, the pattern repeated. Human fleets appeared at major worlds and trading stations, demanding immediate surrender. Some alien species tried to fight and were crushed with shocking ease. Others offered to negotiate and found that humans no longer believed in negotiation. The galaxy that had once been ruled by 7 proud species was falling to one species that had been dismissed as too violent and emotional for civilized society. The humans who returned were not the same beings who had been exiled. They were harder, colder, and absolutely ruthless in their pursuit of victory. Admiral Jake Martinez, the former ambassador who had witnessed the original exile, now commanded the largest human fleet. As he prepared to assault the galactic capital itself, he thought about the aliens who had judged humanity unworthy of their civilization. They had been right to fear human violence, but they had made one fatal mistake. They had given that violence 10 years to evolve into something far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when you tried to cage a species that had spent millions of years learning how to survive anything. The final battle for the galaxy began at dawn on Council Prime, the ancient capital world that had ruled galactic civilization for 3,000 years. Admiral Rachel Green stood on the bridge of her flagship Dominion, watching as the largest fleet in human history dropped out of faster-than-light travel around the sacred world. 800 human warships faced the combined might of what remained of the 7 council species. Every surviving alien fleet had gathered here for one last desperate stand. Zephyrian crystal ships that bent light around their hulls, Korthak dreadnoughts bristling with weapons, Nexari trade vessels hastily converted for war, Luminari energy constructs that pulsed with deadly power, 2,000 alien ships against 800 human vessels. The numbers should have favored the defenders, but everyone in both fleets knew better. The humans had not lost a single major engagement since breaking free from their exile. Green activated the fleet communication channel. All ships, this is Admiral Green. Today we finish what the Council started 10 years ago. They wanted to decide humanity's place in the galaxy. Today we show them what that place really is. On the surface of Council Prime, High Chancellor Ur 7 watched the human fleet through the massive crystal dome that covered the council chambers. Her crystalline body flickered with colors that showed fear and desperate determination. Around her, the surviving leaders of galactic civilization prepared for what they all knew might be their final moments. War leader Vex 5, who had taken command after Drakvor's death, stood at attention despite his people's recent defeats. Chancellor, the human fleet is larger than our intelligence suggested. Our defensive formations may not hold. They must hold, Ur 7 replied, her voice ringing like breaking glass. If Council Prime falls, our civilization ends. Everything we have built over thousands of years will become nothing more than human history. Trademaster Nex 12 of the Nexari consulted his tactical displays with shaking hands. Their technology surpasses ours in every category. Their weapons are more powerful, Their armor is stronger, their ships are faster. How did a species we considered primitive advance so quickly? Harmony leader Lum 3 of the Luminari glowed with pale, frightened light. We gave them the greatest gift possible without knowing it. We gave them a common enemy and the time to prepare. Every human now serves a single purpose: our destruction. Above the planet, the space battle began with a fury that shook the very fabric of reality. The alien fleet struck first, sending waves of energy weapons toward the human ships. Plasma beams, particle cannons, and exotic energy weapons that had dominated galactic warfare for centuries. The human ships absorbed the attack like it was nothing more than a light rain. Their dark armor plating had been designed specifically to counter every weapon in the galactic database. Years of captured alien technology and reverse engineering had made human defenses nearly impenetrable. Then, humanity returned fire. The weapons that erupted from the human fleet were beyond anything the aliens had ever imagined. Not just kinetic projectiles, but gravity weapons that crushed ships from within, plasma cutters that sliced through hulls like butter, antimatter torpedoes that erased entire sections of the enemy formation. Captain Steve Parker commanded the human destroyer Vengeance, named after the flagship that had led humanity's first breakout from exile. He watched his weapons tear through a formation of Zephyrian cruisers with cold satisfaction. "Target their command ship," he ordered his weapons officer. "Maximum yield." The massive Zephyrian flagship tried to maneuver away, but human targeting systems tracked its every movement. 3 antimatter torpedoes struck the alien vessel simultaneously. The explosion was visible from the planet's surface, a new star that burned for exactly 12 seconds before fading to nothing. On Council Prime, the alien leaders watched their fleets die on holographic displays. Ship after ship winked out of existence as human weapons found their targets with terrifying precision. The combined might of galactic civilization was being systematically destroyed by a species they had dismissed as violent primitives. "We must surrender," Trademaster Next 12 said, his voice barely a whisper. "We cannot win this battle." "Surrender will not save us," War Leader Vex 5 replied grimly. "The humans have shown no mercy to any species that opposed them. They remember every vote that sent them into exile. Your 7 watched another alien fleet formation collapse under human assault. Then we fight until the end. Better to die as free beings than live as human slaves." Admiral Green monitored the battle from her command center, watching as her fleet methodically destroyed the last organized resistance in the galaxy. Each alien ship that died brought humanity closer to total victory, total control of everything that had once belonged to their former captors. "Admiral," her tactical officer reported, "alien resistance is collapsing. Their formations are breaking up. Some ships are trying to flee the system. Do not let any escape," Green ordered. "This ends today." Human pursuit ships raced after the fleeing aliens, running down every vessel that tried to escape the slaughter. This was not just a battle for territory or resources. This was the final judgment on species that had condemned humanity to exile and isolation. The space battle lasted 4 hours. When it ended, the human fleet hung in orbit around Council Prime like vultures circling a corpse. Not a single alien warship remained intact. The greatest military force in galactic history had been destroyed by a species that was supposed to be contained behind unbreakable barriers. Admiral Green opened a communication channel to the planet below. Her image appeared on every screen, in every building, to every surviving alien on the world that had once ruled the galaxy. "This is Admiral Rachel Green of the Terran Empire. Council Prime has fallen. Your fleets are destroyed. Your civilization is ended. I am now coming down to the surface to accept your surrender." The shuttle that carried Admiral Green to the planet's surface was escorted by a squadron of human fighters. As it landed outside the council chambers, thousands of human marines spread out to secure the ancient seat of galactic power. Green walked through the crystal doors that Jake Martinez had passed through 10 years earlier as a desperate ambassador seeking acceptance. Now she entered as a conqueror claiming her prize. Her boots echoed in the vast chamber as she approached the 7 thrones where the alien leaders waited. The High Chancellor and the surviving leaders of the Council species stood before their empty thrones, no longer the proud rulers of galactic civilization, but defeated beings waiting to learn their fate. 10 years ago, you sat in judgment of humanity, Green said, her voice carrying clearly through the crystal chamber. You declared us unfit for galactic society. You exiled us like criminals and thought you could simply forget we existed. Your Seven's crystalline form flickered with colors that showed resignation and defeat. We underestimated your species, Admiral Green. We believed isolation would weaken you. You gave us the greatest gift possible, Green replied. You gave us unity. For the first time in human history, our entire species had a common goal and a common enemy. Every human alive spent 10 years preparing for this moment. War leader Vex 5 stepped forward, his forearms spread in the Korthak gesture of surrender. What are your terms, Admiral? Green looked around the chamber at the thrones that had once held the rulers of the galaxy. Soon those thrones would be occupied by human governors ruling over what had once been free species. Complete surrender of all council species, she announced. Dissolution of all existing governments. Transfer of all technology, resources and territory to human authority. Your species will serve the Terran Empire as subjects, nothing more. Trademaster Next 12 fell to his knees. You would make slaves of entire civilizations. We would make subjects of species that chose to be our enemies. Green corrected. You had your chance for peaceful coexistence. You rejected it in favor of exile and isolation. Now you live with the consequences of that choice. She turned to address not just the alien leaders but the cameras that were broadcasting her words to every world in the galaxy. Let this be a lesson to any species that might think to oppose humanity in the future. We are not the same beings you exiled 10 years ago. We are harder, stronger, and utterly without mercy for those who stand against us. The alien leaders signed the surrender documents with shaking hands or claws or energy tendrils, depending on their species. Each signature transferred another piece of their civilization to human control. Admiral Green watched them sign away their freedom and felt no satisfaction. Only cold completion of a task that had begun the day the barriers first appeared around Earth. The galaxy had wanted to decide humanity's place in the cosmic order. Now they knew exactly where that place was, at the top, ruling over everyone who had dared to judge them. As the last signature was completed, Green activated her communicator to contact the new human capital on Earth. This is Admiral Green. Council Prime has surrendered. The galaxy is ours. The response came from Emperor Karl Washington, the former president who now ruled humanity's growing empire. Well done, Admiral. Begin establishing human administration on all former council worlds. The Terran Empire officially claims sovereignty over the entire galaxy. Green looked once more at the defeated alien leaders. Your exile of Earth was meant to protect Galak,